Aloha, Planeswalkers. This is Eric from Bane Alley Magic, bringing you another Commander video. And today I'm counting down my top 10 underrated blue cards for Commander. Keep in mind that these are not what I think are the top 10 most powerful blue cards. These are cards that I feel are underrated for how powerful they are. Something may go higher on the list because of how powerful it is, but it may go higher on the list because of how underrated it is also. I do not check stats on EDH Rec or MTG Top 8 because I don't feel like those websites are an accurate portrayal of this casual format. So I'm basing this list off of my personal years of Commander playing experience, and I can tell you that these cards are not seeing very much play. So, as always, let's start with some honorable mentions. The first of which is Telepathy, 1 blue for an enchantment that says your opponents play with their hands revealed. This card is great because it really throws a wrench in your opponent's politics. If any of your opponents has a broken card in their hand and suddenly everyone knows it, then that can really break up alliances easily. Even if no one is playing really broken cards, Telepathy will annoy your opponents, and it can actually stop them from playing certain cards because they can see what kind of responses the other players will have. And of course, Telepathy does not affect you at all, and all of your plans remain hidden. Telepathy didn't make the list because it does see play in Send Triplets decks, and I have seen it played here and there in other decks, but overall, I do not think this card is seeing enough play. Next is Recurring Insight, 4 and 2 blue for a sorcery. It says draw cards equal to the number of cards in target opponent's hand, and it has rebound. So if you cast this spell from your hand, you exile it as it resolves, and at the beginning of your next upkeep, you cast it again without paying its mana cost. In a 4-player Commander game, the odds that someone will have 7 or more cards in their hand at any given time is pretty high. So this can easily draw you a brand new hand for 6 mana, but what makes this card so awesome is that it has rebound, so you get to draw that many cards again on the next turn. Recurring Insight has the potential of drawing you a ton of cards for just 6 mana, but it didn't make the list because drawing cards is something blue just naturally does already, and so a blue deck that even isn't running Recurring Insight probably has some other way of drawing tons of cards super cheap, but I still think Recurring Insight is one of the better choices for blue card draw, and I would say it's not played enough for how much value it gives you. Next is Floodgate, 3 and a blue for a 0/5 wall, and if it gains flying, you have to sacrifice it. If Floodgate leaves the battlefield, it deals damage to each non-blue creature without flying, 1 damage for each 2 islands you control. Okay, so this card is just really funny to me because it has the potential to be a one-sided board wipe, but it's blue. Getting Floodgate to leave the battlefield is not hard to do, especially in any sort of sacrifice or blink theme deck. It's also just a solid blocker who will eventually die to combat if you leave it out long enough. Great for wall decks too. So Floodgate is a blue damage-based board wipe for just 4 mana, and one that I think is not hard to pull off. It didn't make the list because blue has plenty of ways of dealing with creatures already, but if you are playing a blink or walls deck, I think it is a great choice. Alright, now let's get into the actual list, starting with number 10, Dissipation Field. 2 and 2 blue for an enchantment that says whenever a permanent deals damage to you, return it to its owner's hand. This card is a great way to keep your opponents from attacking you. It sets your opponents back so much, they'll normally wait to attack you until they have enough creatures to deal you lethal damage all at once. If they do this, you will die before Dissipation Field's ability even goes on the stack. However, until they get to lethal damage, this will stop 90% of creatures from attacking you at all. And it says whenever any permanent deals you damage, so it's not just creatures. When it comes to preventing damage, I would say that Dissipation Field is better than Dread and probably even better than Propaganda. Instead of having to pay 2 mana with Propaganda, they have to pay that creature's converted mana cost again to get it all the way back on the battlefield, and then it's going to be summoning sick again, so it really does set them back a lot more than Propaganda does. Next is Pemonshora, 1 and 2 blue for an aura. And it says you can pay a blue to untap enchanted creature, or you can pay a blue, an enchanted creature gains flying until end of turn, or you can pay a blue, an enchanted creature can't be the target of spells or abilities this turn, or you can pay 1 generic mana, an enchanted creature gets +1/-1 or -1/+1 until end of turn. This is a nice little toolbox of abilities that can come in handy in multiple ways. Obviously, giving a creature Shroud or Flying is great for protection and evasion. The untap ability can be combined with Arixmethes or Leyweaver to make infinite mana, in addition to giving your creature pseudo-vigilance. Last but not least, the final ability can deal tons of damage with any high toughness creature. Arixmethes, for example, can go from being a power 12, toughness 12 to a power 23, toughness 1, and it can do it at instant speed. So I would recommend this for any blue deck that wants to protect its commander, or give its commander evasion, or really any deck with big creatures looking for a way to get extra damage in. Number 8 is Cloudfin Raptor, a 0/1 bird mutant for 1 blue mana with flying and evolve. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So, would you say that 1 mana is worth it for a 2/3 flyer? Because in any deck with lots of creatures, that's what Cloudfin Raptor easily becomes. And when I play this creature, I'll commonly see it become a 5/6 or bigger, and combine it with some sort of +1/+1 counter synergies, and this will become one of your biggest creatures on the battlefield. And again, it's just 1 measly blue mana. It's like Sarah Ascendant without the lifelink. Okay, maybe it's not that good, but it's definitely one of the more powerful 1-drops for blue. Number 7 is Tromocratis. 5 and 2 blue for an 8/8 Kraken. Tromocratis has hexproof unless it's attacking or blocking. Tromocratis can't be blocked unless all creatures defending player controls block it. This behemoth is the Kraken that most reminds me of the Kraken from Clash of the Titans. It's got super cool artwork too. One arm is a claw and the other is tentacles. It's also a huge creature with some great abilities. First off, having hexproof a majority of the time is just what you want on any huge monster, so Tromocratis is much more likely to survive a few turns than other big bombs. The next ability is half evasion, half one-sided board wipe. Either they can't block him at all, or he gets to kill up to 8 toughness of their creatures. Combine Tromocratis with Death Touch or Indestructible, and he gets way out of hand. He is great for creature removal, he's great for dealing tons of damage, and probably the best choice for a mono blue Voltron deck. Next is Rootwater Thief, 1 and a blue for a 1/2 Merfolk. It says you can pay a blue and it gains flying until the end of the turn, and whenever Rootwater Thief deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2. If you do, search that player's library for a card and remove that card from the game, then that player shuffles his or her library. We've got some really cool artwork here, though the boat that guy's in looks really crappy. I love the idea of flying merfolk, like flying fish. This merfolk practically looks like a vampire too. Really creepy. But of course, the most important thing about this card is the ability to scope out your opponent's entire deck, pick out whatever you want, and exile it forever. And if Rootwater Thief survives, you can end up exiling multiple cards and locking some combo decks out of the game completely. It's like an even better version of Thoughtseize, but instead of removing something from your opponent's hand, you get to remove something from your opponent's entire library. I love this ability. If you are having trouble with combo decks or with specific cards being played that ruin your strategy, try out Rootwater Thief. Next is Trix, the Sudden Storm. 3 and 2 blue for a 4/5 elemental giant with flash and flying. And it says spells you cast with converted mana cost 5 or greater cost 1 less to cast and can't be countered. So this is probably my favorite card to come out of Theros Beyond Death, because besides having super cool artwork, Trix does so many things that I've never seen before. First off, it's a flying giant. When's the last time you've seen one of those? Next, it's a flash giant. Again, you don't see that, like, ever. Finally, it's ramp in blue. And there is hardly any good ramp in blue. I mean, you've got High Tide and Deranged Servant, and that's really it. Overall, Trix is the best blue ramp spell I have ever seen. In addition to ramping, keeping spells from being countered makes sure that you're not wasting that mana. Super cool card, and it's the perfect choice for a commander if you want to build a mono blue sea monsters deck. Next is Shapeshifter. 1 and a blue for a 1/1 Shapeshifter with Changeling, so this card is every creature type at all times. And for 2 and a blue, target Shapeshifter becomes a copy of target creature until your next turn. So not only will this little dude synergize with any tribal synergy, it can also repeatedly clone other creatures on the battlefield. Similar to Mirage Mirror, Shapeshifter can transform at instant speed to become the ultimate blocker, or the ultimate attacker, or perhaps even something like Zakama Primal Calamity with activated abilities you can use. Anyone who's played with Mirage Mirror knows how powerful this can be. I see lots of people playing Mirage Mirror, but hardly anyone playing Shapeshifter. Not only can Shapeshifter transform itself into a copy of target creature, but it can transform any target shapeshifter, so it has the potential of transforming multiple of your creatures into other creatures if you're playing some sort of shapeshifter strategy. It's a broken card that you can use in a variety of ways, so stick it in your blue deck. You will be satisfied. Next is Drift of Phantasms, 2 and a blue for a 0/5 spirit with Defender and Flying and Transmute. So for 1 and 2 blue, you can discard this card to search your library for a card with the same converted mana cost as this card, reveal it and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library, and you can only do this as a sorcery. So this will let you tutor for anything that's converted mana cost 3 in your deck. So this is one of many blue-black cards with the Transmute ability, and they are all great for tutoring out cards with specific mana costs. Actually, they all have pretty decent abilities on them too, so I suggest you check them all out, all the Transmute cards. What sometimes makes them better than normal tutors is that the Transmute mechanic is an activated ability, so it can't be countered with a normal counterspell. Even if you don't transmute with Drift of Phantasms, you get a 5 toughness flying blocker for just 3 mana. That in itself is a good deal. If you plan your deck correctly, this can get you all kinds of cool stuff like Rhystic Study or Pemonshora. When the CMC is 3, then there will normally be a ton of choices in your deck. Number 2 is Icefall Regen. So this is 3 and 2 blue for a 4/3 dragon with flying. When Icefall Regen enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step for as long as you control Icefall Regen. Spells your opponents cast that target Icefall Regen cost 2 more to cast. So this is removal, evasion, and protection all on one body. Anyone who has played with Frost Titan can tell you how powerful this is. Frost Titan does almost the same thing, except it lets you choose new targets to tap down as long as you're attacking. With Icefall Regen, you keep the same creature tapped down, but you don't need to keep attacking. Both of these creatures are hard for your opponents to get rid of because they can end up dealing a ton of damage. If you've ever experienced the power of Frost Titan, you can get the same satisfaction out of Icefall Regen, and it has flying too. Just something I know is good because of the reaction I see in my opponents and how much it messes up their plans when you're tapping down their most important thing. And our number 1 card for my top 10 underrated blue cards is Time Stop. 4 and 2 blue for an instant. It says end the turn. In other words, remove all spells and abilities on the stack from the game, including this card. The player whose turn it is discards down to his or her maximum hand size. Damage wears off, and this turn and until end of turn effects end. Not just a counterspell, not just a fog. Time Step ends your opponent's turn completely. Whatever damage was going to be dealt doesn't happen. Triggers, responses, effects, it all ends when Time Stop resolves. You can even use Time Stop to save yourself from end step effects, like on the card Final Fortune. So instead of losing the game on your extra turn's end step, you can use Time Stop to skip that end step completely. This card is great for a variety of things, very powerful, very underplayed, and I almost never see anyone playing this card, and that's why it's my #1 pick. And that's it. Those are my top 10 underrated cards for blue. So if you like this video, please hit that like button or that subscribe button. It helps out a lot. Also in the comments, let me know if you play these cards. What are some cool tricks we can pull off with these cards? And finally, please let me know what are some of your favorite underrated blue cards. That's all for today, folks. This is Eric from Bane Alley Magic signing off. Until next time, take care, take it easy. Aloha.